we got a VOD review. All right. What MMR are you right now? 1850. Got it. We got 3 wins. Right off the bat, we kind of let our shields fall. So we let our shields fall and our atonement. Huge issue. We always want to make those. We always want to try to keep that up as much as possible. We also spent a lot of globals here. So in this situation, we should just be dotting again. In this spot, what we could do is we could just dispel our mage, get the boomkin dots off. It's not the worst thing to dispel dots against boomkin. It's actually good to do, but you have a lot of different globals so you have to prioritize. So in this situation, it could be good to dispel the mage. You could also just shield him because we're letting our atonements fall, right? And that's how you get a lot of healing out on your priest. You also get it allows you to get more damage out as well because of the fact that you have atonement on them. So now when you get to do damage, you don't have to worry as much about healing. So in this situation, we should already just be reapplying shields and renew. But instead we dot twice, which is fine. But then we take another global to dot the evoker, and now we're starting this go without any CC. We get stunned. Not pressing any damage yet. We dome. Good. We like this. So it's not the worst thing that we are behind just because you press something fast. We also alter instantly, but just for future games, you always want to keep track of your shields and you always want to keep track of your atonement. But we get a good dome as you see. We shield the mage again. Looks like we try to, what is that? We radiance the warrior as well. So we radiance, get a penance on the boomkin, shield the mage again, have PI out already too. I'm assuming you PI'd the mage, right? Yeah, so, well, you PI'd the warrior. Not the biggest deal. Can do it to the warrior too. As long as you're pressing PI, it's good. So, heals. In the boomkin, doing damage. Smiting now. Cocoon. So, in these situations, you already got a cooldown. So, you're doing a lot of things already pretty clean in terms of the basics of Priest. We're getting our dot, we're spreading our dot, we're doing damage when we can, we Shadow Fiend, we PI. We sent Dome super early when they press all their cooldowns, which is nice. But in this spot here, and just in general, it's good to still make sure that you're shielding. Like, you want to always make sure you shield on CD. You always want to make sure you shield on CD. The Dome wasn't that necessary? I disagree. They pressed every cooldown there, right? What's bad about it is the fact that our team just fucking instantly ran out of it. Doing damage to the boomkin. Doing damage to the boomkin. Get cloned. The reason this all happens right now is because you're in a good spot in terms of getting your damage out and whatnot. We already domed on Boomkin Incarn. But now, we're kind of just on top of him, right? So the reason we get cloned here is because our positioning is not the best. We're just kind of on top of the boomkin, so we get cloned for free. We're also spam damaging into the cocoon, and at this point you have to realize that your DPS have already swapped off. Your DPS have already swapped off. You get a cocoon right here. And we're still continuing to press damage on the boomkin. You can either purge him, or you could, you know, swap to a different target and attack him there, but it's kind of just wasted time here. So, wasting time, wasting globals, wasting mana to try and sit here, attack the boomkin with life cocoon up. Cloned. This is where we need to focus on getting our shields out again and getting our atonement. Shield the mage. Run in, we fear. Great. What happens here? We shield the mage. Put up our dot. Put our dot. We get block. Not sure why this guy blocked here. So, big thing that a lot of people do, now that I've been watching a lot of these VOD reviews, is people kind of forget to heal themselves, and it's something that you always kind of have to keep track of. So far everything seems fine. There's nothing going drastically wrong in any of these moments. We heal our mage, we shield our mage here. Could have just dispelled his dots too with the mushroom. If you don't know how boomkins work, if they have 3 dots on their target, they do more damage. So dispelling the dots here would have been good, but you press your shield, you dot the boomkin. Another example of just not keeping up your atonements. So you shield the mage, you can dispel him, you can renew the warrior, you can renew yourself, put up atonement again. But instead, we're kind of going for the damage again. So we're going for damage, we're spreading our dots. He ends up revivaling our dots. Not sure why the mage blocked. Definitely questionable by him. I don't think he did anything necessarily wrong there. these things kind of happen. Okay, no damage out, so you held both pain subs, which is fine. Could have easily thrown a pain sub on the mage here too, but nothing's really happening. Okay, can boom me again. Don the boomkin. Shield the warrior. Nice, we have renew on everything. We're gonna root now. So we're already in this position where we're kind of just not focusing too much on the healing department. This game seems kind of odd. It seems like both teams are kind of all over the place, but here in this spot, we got our dot out. We have 2 dots out already. So what we need to do is we need to probably try to shield the warrior and then kind of just PvE whoever we can, right? Like in this position, it's really bad to kind of chase in. And in this position, it's really bad to kind of chase in around the pillar and kind of follow your DPS, especially when you're playing melee caster and you're the healer that's kind of in a spot where if you do push in, you're just going to get CC'd. So at this point, dampening's kicking in. We already have our dots out on each target, but now it seems like people are finally doing damage, right? So we're finally starting to take some damage. We heal a little bit. We get a shield. Warriors at a line. Mage is taking a lot of damage now. In this position, and even earlier on, you could have said that to be more aggro, but now the fact that we're taking damage, this is where we want to just react with something, right? We have Rapture. Rapture is always great because it's just not only a solid amount of shielding and it's a low CD, but it also just helps them. It helps them stay stable, right? Because you're going to continue to get the atonement healing while the Rapture shields are up. So even if they're not breaking the shields instantly, you can just keep spamming them out to kind of keep them full if you're not worried too much about mana. So in this position, just not pressing Rapture is obviously a mistake. A huge part of the game is obviously reacting to CDs. So we're taking a ton of damage. We're at 33% dampening. Shield. We're trying to get our dots out again. And now, pretty unlucky timing here that the second you try to go for damage, the Evoker is pressing CDs. But you always want to be tracking how much damage you're kind of taking, how deep dampening is in these solo shuffles as well. So what you should have been doing in this position is not trying to get any damage out, but basically just trying to make sure you're healing. So you could also position better. You can be closer by the pillar, so you're not kind of in a straight line with the Evoker. And just worrying about healing and getting healing throughput out is the biggest thing. So getting Rapture shields out on your whole team not only puts up atonement, but you'll obviously protect your team a little bit from damage before this happens. Then we get out of CC. We press our Radiance. We're trying to cast. So we get our Rapture now. He Dragon Rages as well. So once again, it's just a matter of everything so far, I'm going to be honest, is fine. Like, you're not really doing anything crazy wrong. Nothing's going crazy. Nothing is too off in terms of what you're supposed to be doing. But the moment you fall apart is when they actually start doing damage. So the first minute or so, not much damage is going out. Both teams for 2 minutes weren't really doing much. But in this position, 30% dampening, we need to just react. We need to just press our Rapture, not try and worry too much about spam healing or spam casting rather. But we just get our Rapture out. We get our Rapture out a little bit quicker here, and this doesn't happen, right? We're also in a spot where Dome comes back up, and we have 2 PSs still available. So really, in this situation, it all comes down to us just not pressing a CD. Especially with double PS now on Priest, there's no reason right here to not just press PS on the mage. You have to think about Arena sometimes as a game of momentum and tug of war, right? Right now, this is where they're kind of fighting back. They're pulling on the rope a little bit harder, and you have to respond, right? This is where you have to kind of dig deep and respond as well. You press the PS on the mage, you get out of this stun, you start spamming Rapture shields. You obviously can worry about dispelling dots as well. But if you get the Rapture shields out starting from this stun here, you press PS on the mage, you get the Rapture shields out immediately as well. Because like I said, we are in 35% dampening. Then this doesn't really happen. But instead, we try to get a couple casts out. We shield. We Rapture too late. We also PS too late because he already Dragon's Breath or Dragon's Rage, sorry. So all of this kind of stems from just waiting a very long time and being too patient with our cooldowns for this first round. I also think our position could have been a little bit better here at the end to not get lined up for the triple dragon stun, but This mainly comes down to just not pressing CDs when it mattered, when we're taking damage. So we obviously reacted at the start, which was really well with our dome. Both teammates kind of trolled with that and ran away, but it was during their incarn and they kind of got defensive on their go for the beginning, so that was fine. But in this situation, we're just kind of not reacting enough. So far, biggest things from this first game is we don't have to worry too much about keeping our dot on 4 targets at the same time. If you're able to, you can definitely just spam like Mind Blast or something to do damage. We don't always have to worry about targeting each target individually to keeping our dot up. It's a lot easier to just spread, like put up the dot once and spread the dot. If we also have the dots up already, we don't have to worry about constantly reapplying them because it's just, we don't have to make sure that there's always 15 seconds left on the dot. I think this game was going to be a dampener game regardless, but I think this game was definitely lost because of the fact that we just didn't press CDs fast enough. We're in a spot where we have to recognize how deep dampening is and know that we don't have the raw healing throughput to kind of survive these moments. So same thing as the last round. We have our atonements up and our renews, which is great, but you never want to make sure we're kind of falling out on that. So always making sure that we have double shields up on our DPS in these moments. But once again, min-max thing, not the worst. We reshield the mage, dot the warrior, we're doing damage. Positioning's rough here. We're definitely really pushed in, which I'm not sure if it's gonna come back to bite you, but let's see. And our mage, we're stacked in the warrior, we get feared. So as I said, positioning will definitely come back to bite you in certain moments. We're kind of pushed in, and what can either happen is we can either stay further back by the pillar, or we can stay pushed out but be kind of in the open, right? Stay kind of in the open. If they try to go you, it's not the worst thing. You are a priest, you do have the double focus will, damage reduction when the warrior decides to hit you, so it's very unlikely that they'll just swap to you and kill you in this spot because I feel like you are kind of tanky and you do have a lot of CDs, so you can either stay further out or pull back and stay close to the pillar so you're not just kind of further up than your DPS. You're also in this spot here where a lot of this just comes down to paying more attention with more games, right? This is one of the easier deaths you can have on Fear. Gotta go for the Mind Blast instead. He fears us. Swap your Evoker. Shield the Evoker. Get a Mind Games on the Warrior. Got him. Shield the Evoker. Renew the guy. Renew us. Here we get a dome. Fantastic. And our Rapture Shield's out now. I would say the biggest mistake you have in this situation is they're pressing a lot of CDs. We can definitely dome a lot faster. Looks like we human trinket out and dome anyways. Where's our normal trinket? Where's our trinket CD? So we normal trinket and dome anyways, which is fine. When they're popping off like this is a good time to just press the dome. Like right here, we're all stacked. It's easy to press dome. We can also just press a Radiance as well because Radiance supplies our atonement. But I think instead we shield and try to renew both of us. Possibly slight panic. Maybe you're hitting the wrong keybind or something, but we trinket, we get the dome. Not the worst thing. I think it could have definitely domed before the CC and maybe held it, but we trinket the stun late. We get the dome down. Right here is where we need to basically just Rapture spam. This is where we just lob a Radiance. We lob a Radiance to get the recharge going, and then we spam Rapture. We don't press a button for a little bit. We shield. Now we start Rapture spamming. Okay. Shield again. We get one Radiance out. Great. Get kicked on our penance. Immediate counter pressure going to Boomkin. How you heal on Priest is all about shields, right? It's a lot of shields. It's a lot of atonement. Your healing on Priest is like 30%, 35% shields. Obviously, Radiance is a big part of that, and then atonement now. So there's a lot of times where you don't really have to, and this is where the idea of min-maxing comes into play and worrying about mana. We send a Radiance here in a second that we didn't necessarily need to do. We kind of just don't press our shield. So here we can just shield. Like we have so many moments starting now to press shield. We've got one global, two globals, three globals. We don't press shield. The reason this is important is because shield obviously is a huge amount of your healing. So you want to basically be pressing it on cooldown. And the nice part about shield is that you don't actually waste healing from your shield. So shields are great because there's no waste in it. If you shield and people are dotted, you're not actually losing healing. You're not getting over healing. This part, we're just kind of wasting globals in a sense. We're not getting our shields out. Try to get a schism in our shadow fiend. Not the worst thing. And this is just where effective healing comes into play, right? We've already got the shadow fiend out. We got a dot. If we're just shielding, if we're shielding between our globals, this is a lot better, right? If we're shielding, every 5-6 seconds the way it should be on our DPS, we're probably a little bit healthier to start this off and not having to worry about our radiance. Looks like we let our flash shield procs go to waste as well, which once again, huge loss in mana. I don't know if this is going to add up to you losing the game, but definitely something that is going to prevent you, in my opinion, from climbing up further with global mistakes like this. Radiance again. We still have flash shield procs. We still have shield. Nothing's really happening right now. You have to sometimes play the game differently and kind of keep some awareness of what's going to win you the game. So when you're against the Mistweaver, right? Unless he's CC'd, they're most likely not dying. Unless he's CC'd or you're in deep dampening or you're spam purging their hots, they're most likely not dying. So right here, trying to get our damage out past the lockout doesn't really do much. There's no CC on the monk. He's spamming heals. He's just channeling Soothing Mist right here. Like, nothing's really happening. So what we should be doing is trying to focus on our healing and focusing on making sure that we're decent in mana as well. I explained this the last VOD review I did. It's very important to also keep healing out and having your team feel safe, because what happens in shuffle? Think about every time you guys play the game and you're playing arena or you're playing solo shuffle. Whenever you are just low HP, you're playing the game drastically different than you would if you were full HP. So in these situations, if we're just kind of focusing more on our healing instead of getting our damage out, spamming damage here, your DPS are going to play different. Your DPS are probably going to push in for CC. Maybe they'll focus more on doing damage instead of kiting or whatever they're doing. But it helps a ton to do that. And like I said, that may not be the case for this specific instance, but when you start to get higher rated and you start to try to push more rating in general and want to improve, it's something that's very noticeable when you're not healing at the correct times. This, I think, is an example of that. I think we're definitely not shielding enough. If we're shielding more, if we're dispelling this guy's dots on his mushroom procs or his mushrooms as well, which kills his damage a lot, then we're in a healthier position, right? So looks like we throw a PS out. It's always about keeping track of what's going on, right? Keeping track of the dampening, keeping track of how much healing output you have, how much damage is going out. So the first PS isn't the biggest deal. I'm gonna, continue to watch to see if I mind it or not. I currently don't mind that PS, but I think if we're focusing on healing in this situation, then we're basically, we might not have to PS right here if we're just focusing on getting our healing out. But we PS him, he leaps away, he starts attacking our evoker. We also lose both of our flash shield procs, and the reason that sucks is because the flash shield procs are instant, they don't cost mana, they also put up atonement. And Flash Shield does a decent amount since they buffed it in, one of the more recent patches a month or so ago. So if we're focusing on healing here, this doesn't happen. We can focus on our heals, focus on on getting our dots, dispel more, use our Flash Shield procs, stay healthy, and probably don't have to use that first PS. The warrior ended up running away there too, which kind of, even though your PS wasn't too bad, it kind of made it worse because the fact that the warrior just kind of ran away immediately. What happens here? We get bashed. And now all these things are going to add up, right? All these things are going to add up. The reason that it's important now that it's so good for you to watch this, because what I keep saying about we didn't focus on our healing and we didn't use our flash shield procs and we had to radiance instead and we had to use our PS still bar, what up? This is why in this situation, okay, getting our damage out, we're running. We're half HP now. We wasted 1 PS. We're stacked as well. So in this spot, if your mage is higher HP, maybe he doesn't blink on top of you here. This is also positioning on your end. You can probably move further away. You could probably move further away so that this doesn't happen. But we're in a spot here where you're going to try to Radiance and you can't. Like in this spot, we don't have Radiance. There's nothing we can do. So that's why we're falling behind, right? We've already used both our Radiance stacks. We're half mana now. We wasted a PS and the warrior ended up just not even hitting him during that. And because we wasted our flash, or we just didn't use our flash shield procs, now we're in a spot where we're behind. We get rooted. We try to MD our dots or MDS, but we're still stacked up for the double stun. What happens here? We shield, we Radiance now, and we last PS. So believe it or not, this situation here happened because of two things. One, we focused a lot on trying to get damage out when we didn't have any CC. We're not in super deep dampening, so it wasn't too effective anyways. And we stopped healing and stopped focusing on shielding, like shielding every glow or shielding on cooldown for our teammates. Stop focusing on getting the dots off. We also positioned poorly, and we're in a spot where we're kind of just easily stacked upon, right? Those two situations are why here, not only do they get a PS that I feel like kind of ended up being wasted, but they get both pain subs. So now both pain subs are wasted because we just weren't focusing enough on healing. I feel like a lot of this situation is we're just not shielding enough, and that's a huge amount of your healing on Priest. It's literally 35 to 40% of your healing every time you play Priest. So you always want to be making sure we're shielding on CD. Okay. Doing damage to the warrior. Warrior ends up dying. So the reason you won this game, even though I feel like a lot of mistakes were done, especially positioning, is because the monk ended up throwing the game completely. Which is kind of how it happens. He runs in here. He probably doesn't have a port down. So instead of just porting, presses cocoon. So he walls, has to cocoon himself. Now he doesn't have for the warrior. And this is one of those situations where you'll definitely capitalize at lower rating. And I don't mean this in a bad way. I don't think you won this game because you really did something to win, if that makes sense. It was kind of just a win that happened because, you know, the enemy team completely fumbled the ball, which is fine. Those games happen. You're going to win games like that in Shuffle all the time. I win games like that in Shuffle all the time. And it's like, all right, I'll take the win, I guess. But if you want to obviously, you know, improve and climb, then you have to still keep track of what you could do better. And I think that was this situation. Like, being more self-aware is always going to be a huge thing in improving at obviously everything. But if you're going to improve at the game and get better, it's always important to be more self-aware. So we got the win there, but I think you definitely could have done a couple things better. Mainly focusing on healing. It seems like a lot of this right now is just focusing on healing. I think so far, I feel like, do you PvE? Because I feel like you have mouse over macros, right? So do you PvE? Because for the most part, you seem to understand what's going on. You seem to understand how to actually heal. You seem to understand how to get your damage out and how to do your rotation when it comes to damage, which is great. But I think in regards to Arena, it's different. I don't know how PvE is on Disc Priest. I'm assuming you definitely spam damage more with your Atonement than you would in Arena. But in Arena, it's definitely a huge emphasis on just shielding a lot. We run in. Okay, he roots us. In this situation, we're stuck in this root. Just gotta dispel ourselves. It seems like you're kind of focused on getting dots out on the evoker. We're kind of tunnel vision here. We sit the root. He gets back in our line. We dot him. Could have dotted the warrior there. Could have dispelled the root. You know, ran around the pillar. Ran closer to the pillar here where your player frame is. Gotten healing out again and getting ready to grip. So let's see. We're in a root. Evoker's kind of trying to line up his damage, it seems like. We use our dome, which is not the best thing. Nothing really happened at this point. They didn't really press any CDs. The first game that you domed after the deep breath, and he pressed Incarn, which was fine. But this game, nothing has happened, right? He hasn't pressed Warbreaker. There hasn't been a deep breath yet. Let's see if he does it soon. No Dragon Rage. No Spear. He waits for Dome to fall. Tries to pop his damage, and we Rapture. So the Dome sucked. The Rapture is great. We love this. We love this. Sometimes when you try to pressure CDs, they can definitely be a bit too preemptive, which I think that Dome was definitely a bit too preemptive, but we PI, which is fantastic. I think the Warrior pressed CDs too, right? So, yeah, so the Warrior's now pressing Avatar and shit. Pressing more CDs, presses Warbreaker. So this Rapture is not bad. It was right after the Deep Breath too. Rapture is a lower CD than most. So not the worst Rapture. Obviously, this is where pressing Dome would have been helpful. If we had Dome here, it would have been great, right? He presses Sphere, lost CDs are up, we have Rapture. Dome is nice, but instead, they force PS here. So first PS gets forced. Not the worst thing. Okay. Could have pressed it faster because he had CDs up already and Warbreakered. Obviously, weak auras and add-ons kind of help that, but you press first PS, which is great. You slept. Definitely don't recommend trinketing this, so sitting it's fine. Shield. I don't think we've used grip once in these games. But here, our positioning, we're trying to run away, which is fine. You're trying to make distance get away. But in this spot here, like this is where you can just grip your Boomy. Should definitely dispel the Chrono Loop too. Dispelling Chrono Loop's nice just because it can screw you in the end with positioning because it does port you back. Trying to get your Boomkin away from the Warrior would be very helpful here. So they're not stacked especially, and the Warrior just has to kind of use mobility. But we blink away. Build again. Renew ourselves. Death to Sleep, fucking great. We love that. It kind of wasted the fear, but it's not the worst thing. You just gotta remember that your Boomy has clone. So kind of screw Clone Jars here. He Blade Storms. We have the second PS as well. I think a lot of this, once again, just stems from not healing enough. So before this happens, they're kind of behind the pillar. We can dot the Warrior, but it's the same thing I said, man. This is gonna add up so much for you. I promise the next time you queue, this is all gonna add up. We have a few moments here where we're kind of just not pressing buttons. So we get the shield, we get the renew. We try to Death to Sleepwalk. And then we dot the Warrior. So we fear the Warrior, we dot the Warrior. And once again, it's hard to keep repeating the same thing, but these games, it's all about just shielding more. It's all about just shielding more, having more uptime with our shields when we need to heal. We don't always have to focus on doing damage. We don't always have to focus on keeping up our dot on 3 targets. If we're right here, we just shield the Boomkin. So we get away, we re-shield the Boomkin because it's gonna be most of our healing. But if we re-shield the Boomkin there, we're at what? We're at 257k health, 258k health with a shield for 30. So we're in a good spot. But instead, we're kind of behind on the healing. Now we have to PS again, use our last PS, shield, double radiance. You're also here mashing shield. And in this situation too, if you want to get more shields out, even if you're dying, it's not the worst thing because shield has such value to just press renew while you're dying. If you have atonement up already and you shield to get the extra CDR on your shield, that's not the worst thing to do. So even here, when we're dying, we PS the Boomy, we radiance. You can just refresh Palm here, right here. You can just refresh. You can just refresh renew here or renew the mage and then get a shield back. But instead, you know, we use our last PS, we radiance, we shield, we radiance again. Now we're kind of waiting to use globals and we get stunned. Definitely could have gotten the renew and then the shield again, but because we were kind of just mashing our shield global and we didn't have it up yet and kind of waited a little bit, we're even further behind. We get stunned and it looks like we kind of just let him get the song off, so that just takes more time. More practice, this song doesn't go off. We don't get song Chi-Chi'd here. We also immediately start flash healing out of the CC, which is never really the play. We have shield available. We don't need to flash heal. So if we just went for the shield and moved away, we don't get songed. We have to trinket swap. And once again, man, all these things, anytime I watch these VOD reviews, especially if you're lower rated, you guys are gonna see these things all add up. All of these little mistakes, all of these globals that you're using, especially the ones that are the wrong globals, they all add up to what's about to happen. So going back even further to kind of reiterate my point. In this situation, we get the death. If we re-shield the Boomy, like we fear his charge, if we re-shield the Boomy instead of pressing our dot here, we're a little bit healthier. We probably don't need to pain sup, but instead we pain sup and we shield. Now we deep breaths So now we use our second paints up. We bark skin on top of that. We're not renewing, which is healing we're losing out on. We're not getting our shield again because we didn't renew. So we're still missing out on healing. Then, because we decide to go for the flash heal here, instead of running away or shielding, we get Song of Chi-Ji'd. And because of that, trinket swap. So now, and I swear this is it's always really crazy for people to see. Now, because of these decisions that we made right here, we're worrying about getting our dot and we have to use the DR on the warrior. Now that because of us using that, we've had to use skin, second PS, and trinket swap. And I know it doesn't seem like much, like, oh, if I shielded there, maybe we live. No, if we shield here instead, if we get the death and then we re-shield the boomkin, because you just have to shield on CD on disc. On disc priest, you have to shield on CD. Unless they're actually AFK not attacking, you just have to do it because that's where your healing comes from. So if we just shield this guy, this setup here doesn't happen. If we're focusing more on getting our healing out, we shield him. We shield him, we get our radiance, we get our renew, we shield again. And then even here, where we get songed, we could have, before we even got songed, we could have been in a better spot. So even here, when he runs in, you get the fear, you get storm bolted. Off this Stormbolt, we could have still been repositioning away from this pillar. You know, moving further down here, down to where your chat box is, moving away. But instead, we're kind of here. The monk rolls in immediately. We're in range of his Chi Torpedo. Half DR sweeps us. Now, because we're behind on healing, and because we're behind on our globals and putting up our renew and getting our atonement out, we're trying to panic, I guess, and press our flash heal. Another mistake, because you never want to flash heal unless you absolutely need absolutely need burst healing or your shield's on CD. It's better to just shield instead of getting the flash heal out. But instead, you know, we're kind of behind. We're kind of in a panic situation. We go for the flash heal. We get Song of Chi-Ji'd. And all of that is because of the, you know, 4 to 5 to 6 globals that we pressed incorrectly before, where we're kind of focusing on other things. And the fact that now we're in this panic state, we don't move, we get songed, and what happens? They get trinket swap. So all of this is because of the fact that we just kind of weren't focusing enough on our healing. We weren't shielding enough. And would the second PS have happened? Possibly. You might have had to second PS there. You might have had the second PS late there, even on top of the skin, or maybe a few seconds after, just because we're taking damage, we're in 30% dampening. But the reason all of this chaos happens is because of those little, you know, 5 to 6 globals that you did wrong, and also positioning poorly and not getting away from the song. So, what happens here? One of the few times where pressing Power Word Life is definitely better than pressing shield. He drops low. Power Word Life is great. We're at 1850. So, huge issue there. Let's see. I think they get second block, right? Shield. Life. Flash shield proc. And now we're casting on this guy again. So, the casting here is fine. It's not the worst thing. This is where we can also go for a penance. But instead, because penance, once again, I think you're playing Wheel and Woe, right? So penance also is going to increase our shield. And I think penance also increases shield anyways with your tier set. So, could go for the penance here, which makes our next shield stronger, because we still have a tone up. But we go for the flash shield, we get the shield. Not bad. We shield ourselves. We shield again. We have Rapture going. Great. Stone bolted. Let's see. Hopefully we press Dome. We press Dome. Great. Radiance. Get the kill. Whew. So, biggest takeaways from this round once again. We know how to do damage. We know how to put our dot up. We know how to keep up our dot. We know how to go for the Mind Blast. We know how to do our rotation. That's great. But the biggest thing we're doing a lot is we're just focusing. We're focusing so much on other things rather than shielding on CD. Which is, believe it or not, it's going to change the game a lot. Also, I've noticed a lot that we're not pressing Solus. I personally don't like Solus. I think a lot of people opt to not play Solus anymore. But we're going through a lot of these games and where we're not really pressing Solus, so we're losing a lot of mana regen as well. And speaking of mana regen, we're using Inner Shadow. Inner Shadow is fine. If you think the game is going to be fast, you can play Inner Shadow because it's just more healing. If you're not going to worry about mana, Inner Shadow is fine. But whenever you are playing against these types of comps, I would say specifically when it comes to like Mistweavers, where they can kind of dampen you out, Inner Light is definitely better in my opinion. And that way you can actually spam out heals and not worry too much about your mana. But, you know, we get a nice win here. Not the worst thing. I don't think you played terribly wrong, obviously. You kept your team alive, which was great. We had our dome here at the end, which was nice too. The mage ended up one-shotting this evoker. Fuck yeah. But this game, I definitely think... I think you earned this win more than your last win, personally. Same thing through all these games. I think swapping to Shield Discipline would help you a lot with your mana. I think you can definitely play Inner Light instead of Inner Shadow against these Mistweaver Monks. It's mainly Mistweaver Monks and like Resto Druids where it's better. Sometimes Shamans, but mainly Mistweaver Monks and Resto Druids where having the Inner Light is better. Since mana comes down to mana a lot of the time in your shuffles. But the biggest thing so far is just shielding on CD. I think we can use our CDs a little bit better. Our dome was too preemptive at the start. Nothing was really happening before we pressed dome. But definitely the biggest thing is not pressing shield enough. Not enough emphasis on getting our shields out. Same thing, we're just starting off the game. I feel like we get free sheeped here, which is really unfortunate. I don't know if it's going to amount to much because his teammate's behind the pillar, but we get free sheeped. Looks like they push in. And already in this sheep, we just don't have our... Shadowy Covenant's okay. Some people play it nowadays. Even with this sheep, we just don't have our atonements out. So we don't have atonement already. We don't have our shields out, so we're taking damage. And like I said, it may not seem like the biggest deal, right? It may not seem like the biggest deal where, oh, like we're all full HP, why does shields matter? Well, it matters because when you shield, you don't... If they're taking damage and you shield, and they're full HP, it's not the same as when you have to worry about healing, right? It's not like you're spamming Riptide into someone that's full HP. You're not losing anything from that. So even here, we kind of push up before our DPS, which is also kind of a mistake. Let's see. We're kind of too far from the pillar. Always have to be cautious of where we're standing, especially when you're against a mage that's just an invis or any stealth class. So just being in the spot is rough. You're free sheep, don't have any shields out. You're getting damage on your boomkin already. Come out, you get a shield. Looks like we're not hitting... I think your mouse overs are fucking up or something. We're not hitting our globals here. Now we get incapped again. So I feel like that's a weird error with your binds or something. So we shield this guy. What we should do to our warrior now is dispel him out of the Nova, or dispel him out of our Nova and the Brain Freeze procs, like the Flurry procs that make it the mage guaranteed crit. So we could dispel this, and then we can renew him. But we're kind of waiting. Get DR incapped. Now we shield. Renew our guy. We're running away from the sweep. Great. Okay, so we're running away from the sweep. We dot the monk. We dot the monk, but then we penance the evoker without our dot. If we dotted the evoker here, slight misplay, but dot the evoker here before we penance. Obviously, we get it on the mage. Then we would have had 3 penances out. Okay. Deep press in. We're in a root. What do we do? HPL is just clunky. Oh, deep breath. Shield. Shield. We have our Rapture out now. Great. We love the Rapture spam. Love the Rapture spam. We dome. Okay. Not the worst dome because it made them stop attacking you. We get dome. He's got veins up, so it is not the worst thing to do. Dome. We're getting our dot out. I feel like we're not penancing enough either. So in here, same thing. We get our dot, but we mind blast. So the reason penance is also important. There we go. We get a big penance there, which is nice. So the reason penance is nice is because it obviously works with Wheel and Woe in your 4-set for stronger shields. So definitely feel like we could possibly penance more. But once again, these are all little things that kind of add up. We get our shields. We dot the Evoker. And same thing. Kind of wasted our globals here. Our Evoker already has the dot on him. So Evoker already has a dot for 9 seconds, but we decide to re-dot him and then dot the mage. And like I said, small things, but all these globals are going to add up, right? Like misplaying globals, even if you're just adding extra spells, is something that helps cause you to lose, but you don't exactly know why. And a lot of it is because we're just kind of having these wasted globals in this sense. So we already have the dot on the Evoker, but we dot him again. Now we dot the mage. So we get our Schism, we get our Mind Blast. Okay, this is where we need to shield again, get a Mind Blast again, bash him. So here's the thing, if we're going to be aggressive in this moment, we obviously still have to worry about healing and getting our shield out, but if we're going to be aggressive and rely on our atonement healing, we could definitely refresh our atonement with a 1 of Radiance or a shield. But once we get our damage out here, right here, once our damage is done, we already get the Mind Blast. We could Schism him, but we already get the Mind Blast out. We used both our Mind Blast charges. We used our penance. What we can do, especially since it's against the mage and not the Boomkin with 9 trash buffs, is we can just spam purge. We can spam purge the monk's buffs or the mage's buffs. If you purge off renewing and you're purging off enveloping, monks get screwed so hard from this. So that would have been more pressure than what we decided to do. So instead, we decide to dot him again and Mind Blast. Instead, we decide to dot him again and Mind Blast. And if we just kind of... If we were just purging him from the start here, I don't think this would happen. We get a lot of healing reduction there. If we start purging immediately, we can maybe get lucky, get his renewing. But once again, not the worst thing. Just got to keep track of how... Keep notice of how important purge is against certain classes like this. Big burst from the Evoker. Lining. Flash Shield proc. Got the mage again. Mining him. Mind Blast. Damn. So, same thing. Could have penanced this guy. Penance is nice because it obviously makes your shields better. So could have penanced him instead, but we go for the Mind Blast. We go for the Smite Mind Blast. Which also, Mind Blasting like this too, if they're just getting free healed, is kind of rough because we're just having to reapply our dot again. So, because it takes time off the dot with expiation. Same thing I've been saying. We're using a lot of globals to keep up our dot sometimes when we can just penance him. Looks like we're waiting. We go for the Solace. We have shield up again. This is where reshielding is great. Can always just hit the reshield here. Got to keep track of shielding. Got to keep track of making sure we're doing that on CD. Go for the Smite. We go for the Mind Blast. And then obviously we get sheeped off nothing. So in this spot, it probably would have been better to just shield the warrior. We shield the warrior. We solace the mage. Here. We get our dot out. Maybe we solace the mage. We shield the warrior. Shield's back off CD. We shield. Shield's important. Need to press our shield. But instead we go for the... If we went for the shield there as well, we could just hit the renew on the Boomkin. Or we can penance the Boomkin instead for healing. But we go for the Smite. We go for the Mind Blast. Get sheep for free. Another thing you always have to keep track of. Always have to keep track of your DRs. I feel like your DR tracker is to the left of your stun, right? So always have to keep track of your DRs. Could have gotten the death there. This mage seems to just cast the sheeps for free. And this, once again, this is one of the best examples I can get of when you're dying and when you're not getting the healing out, or when you're doing things that are maybe causing your team to start dying or rotting, it makes people play different. People definitely play way different when they're dying. It makes them change how they see the game. It makes them change the globals they use. It makes them change their positioning. So even here, and I know this is not going to seem like the craziest thing, but if we just focus more before this CC on our healing, if we got the death here, this monk probably doesn't push in. Your warrior probably doesn't leap to the monk that gets cloned anyways. And then your boomkin probably doesn't go bear form and can continue to do damage. But because we're already kind of falling behind on our globals, because we get that free sheep, all of this kind of gets weird. So even though we're not dead, we're not we're not currently about to die, our team is already playing kind of weird because of that. So we get sheep. All right, dispel the sheep. Now the warrior's taking a lot of damage. Flash heal. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing that we keep talking about. Flash heal is one of your lower priority spells. Obviously shield. Keeping up your dot, shield, penance, renewing to reset your shield CD. Flash heal if you need to and you don't have all those other spells. If you don't have the other spells available and you need healing, then obviously you want to flash heal instead of renewing. But in this situation, because we're so far away, we use a radiance. We try to get the flash heals and our warrior's just going full Zug. He's going full Zug. He sees the evoker's 20% HP. He's popping his damage. He's chasing behind the pillar. And the reason you fall behind here in terms of positioning is because we obviously try to get our dot out and we're trying to cast. Where we just ran in with our team, got our penance out, and then shielded him. Obviously this doesn't happen. Now we're in a root. We fear the evoker on his 3-block. Great. Oh, we don't get the death again. So we trinket. Radiance. Get the life. Shield. Got the mage. Penance the mage. We get our dot spread. We get kicked now. The nice thing about priest is the fact that you have 2 schools. If you get kicked here, you can easily just go for a cast, right? So if you get kicked here, what you can do, dog, you think the resub, just go for the mind games. You're already close to the pillar. You get kicked right here. You get kicked on the penance. Your dot spreads. You're already close to the pillar. Go for the mind games. Go for the mind games. You can also go for the mind blast instead, but you go for the mind games here. This guy heals you with his damage done, and you also get the atonement healing. But instead, we kind of jump to the pillar. Now we rapture. We're still behind. Rapture spam. We get a radiance out. End up topping him with a crazy radiance heal. I know you got a flash heal proc. Insane. So top our team. Have rapture up. And this is where obviously just paying more attention comes in. Paying close attention and getting more games in is where things like this get fixed, right? If you had more games in, a little bit more practice, had more of an understanding of, you know, keeping your healing out and when your CDs are coming back up. Right here, right on this lockout, you obviously get the mind games on this guy. Then you start healing it with rapture, top your team. But you also have more attention to the fact that we're in 46% dampening. 46% dampening. We get our shields out. We top them. We see this big fucking firework come out. We press our dome. Dome literally just came off CD. We either press our dome, or if we still think we don't have dome, we can press our PS. We can press a PS here. But don't press PS. We press dome now. Fucking insane. Obviously, could have been faster. But insane that we pressed the dome there on part of the deep breath. Your warrior ends up just lining you anyways. Fucking love solo shuffle. But the boomkin stays in it, so. Could have been faster. Maybe the warrior would have decided to stay if it was a little bit faster. And that's where all these little things come into play. Another thing too you want to make sure that you're paying attention to is if you look at this game, we're as fuck, right? The mana's gone. We're still in inner shadow too. And this is why I explained the importance of using inner light into different healers. Obviously, you can swap it mid-game. If you don't have the macro, definitely should make that because it's bugged right now. But swapping to inner light, I mean, you could probably swap to inner light from, you know, halfway through the game, but definitely important to keep track of that because if you're in this spot here, we're basically. We have 9% mana. If we have inner light up, we can probably heal for a little bit longer. Not really sure how this game plays out. I feel like you might win soon. I feel like you might win soon because you still have swap. Let's see. Looks like we have an error with our... We have a mouse over error here. So we dispel them. We shield. Okay, we flash heal. Powered life. Shield again. Radiance. We use our PS. Got this guy. Oh my god. Powered life, powered life, powered life, powered life. Oof. Guy gets low. We're spamming our radiance, but we're ooh. We powered life, we swap. We PS ourselves. Oh my god. Penance, 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 penance. You have shields, you have shields. Damn. So, few things. Obviously, shield discipline would be huge. I think you should definitely try shield discipline the next time you queue, because we're not pressing Solus that many times. I think we've pressed Solus maybe twice in 4 rounds now. I also think that, yeah, this is the issue with mouse over. I think you can still do well. I think you can still do kind of well in PvP with mouse over macros, but it's hard to review a game and be like, hey, stop playing like this. But obviously, this is the issue in a sense with mouse overs. You're trying to run away, but you can't actually heal yourself. So we had powered life, and we had shield, well, enough mana for powered life and shield and penance, but we just can't heal ourselves because of mouse over macros. I definitely suggest playing shield discipline instead. You also got innervated here at the end. You probably could have just shielded yourself and tried to CC the mage, maybe shield yourself. Go for the double radiance with the innervate up. Maybe you would have lived, but obviously we're kind of in panic mode, and then we tie the round. So could have definitely won this round as well, which possibly would have sent you into the 4-2 lobby, and then you go up in Momar, you start going up rating. But from what I've seen, obviously mouse overs are rough. I still think you can make it work and kind of progress with that. Oh, you keybind targets now. Fuck yeah. Okay, so obviously keybinding targets is going to be great. I don't want to sit here and tell people how to play, but obviously mouse overs just kind of suck for arena. It's really hard to move because of a situation like that, right? What's really funny is somebody convinced me. There was this feral that I played with in Kata that tried to convince me that mouse overs would be good for me, which actually set me back tremendously far because I just couldn't heal. Because I had this situation right here. This exact situation, plus I'm a Resto Sham, so I'm getting trained into the dirt by every melee. I had this situation happen to me all the time on my Shaman in the middle of the first season of Kata, because people would attack me and I just couldn't heal. People would attack me and I literally just couldn't heal and move at the same time. And I had this panic situation, kind of like you had right here. So the fact that you are having keybinds now instead of mouse over is great. That's fucking awesome. But aside from that, watching your games, I think the keybinds will definitely help you. I think the biggest things that I would want you to work on, you know, not that it's homework or anything, but the biggest things that I want you to work on is, it seems like you have a good understanding of knowing your spells, knowing your rotation. You get your damage out quite often. You're keeping your dot up for the most part. But I definitely think the biggest things you should work on are obviously making sure that you're using your CDs correctly. You don't want to waste dome when nothing's happening. You obviously want to make sure that you're keeping track of how much damage people are taking, CDs people have popped up, whether that means you have to get a weak aura for it, or just even paying more attention to the frames, because Gladius does show you things like Icy Veins, right? Or Dragon Rage. So definitely keep track of the offensive CDs the enemy's using. That'll help you a ton. Don't be afraid to, you know, use your Rapture or keep track of, like, notice how deep dampening is, so you have to get to a point of using your Rapture or your Dome instead of kind of holding on to them. That'd be number one. Number two, I think we're putting a lot of emphasis on trying to keep up the triple dots and trying to keep up just spamming damage when instead we should be worrying about healing. I think shielding on CD and penancing more often is very big. And I think that if you can get that down where you're constantly shielding, you're making sure you're shielding nearly on cooldown, you're making sure you're penancing more, even if it's for damage or healing, it doesn't matter. It works with your wheel and woe and your force set to make your shield stronger. I think obviously going shield discipline will help you a lot too, but for the most part, everything seems fine. Your positioning isn't too rough. I don't think you're having these moments of not really pressing globals every now and then, but I think that's more so because of your mouse over macros that are kind of screwing you. So the biggest thing I would say for you is obviously keep playing. Try to focus more the next time you queue on just getting your shields out, shielding on CD, you know, renew if you have to get your shield CD lower. Obviously, make sure you're trying to get your keep your pendants out as well, because it does buff your shields. And I think if you do that instead, it'll be better. I'm used to pumping Atomic healing. Yeah, so Arena is definitely different. Like, spamming damage like that and not shielding is definitely something where if you're in PvE or in an RBG is kind of good, because you're obviously getting way more Atomic healing. But when you're queuing Arena, not shielding and spamming damage and spamming smite on people while they're dying is not the best thing to do. So, yeah. I would say those are the biggest things for you, dude.